talked about activism a lot, but actually you're doing art activism. You're a mixture of artist and activist, right? Why?
Why? Why mix art and activism?
Yeah.
So, well, it's interesting. You said, at one point, you said, so much activism is about sacrifice and hard, and and I would add to that, it's also so much activism lacks imagination. I think artists have a tendency to be creative, more imaginary, to think out of the side of the box, but tend to have very big egos, just think about their career, and also tend to not really be very coherent between their politics and their everyday life, how they live, their ideas and their behavior. Whereas activists tend to be much more coherent between what they believe and how they live, but then their ideas and their behavior tend to be much more courageous, less ego-driven, more collective, but lack imagination. It's always the same, we're going to do a blockage, we're going to do a flyer, we're going to do a strike, we're going to do a demonstration, we're going to do a riot, whatever. It's the same old forms. And all these forms were invented by people at some point. And we think in the Laboratory of Insurrection Imagination that by putting together artists and activists, you basically can use the best of both, use the courage of the activist and the imagination of the artist to really develop new forms of disobedience. Because I think we need new forms of disobedience all the time, not only because they are much more desirable, they're much more fun, but also because the state and the police learn very quickly. So you have to always reinvent so that you can actually have success before the state understands how to repress that certain form of disobedience. So that's what we do in the lab, and I think for me it's super important that we don't take that imaginary element away from, that we feed activism with that, and that we feed art with a political engagement, and that we don't, there's so much political art, there's so much, installations or performances about, the climate breakdown, or a photo show about refugee crisis, or a theatre play, about the ecological catastrophe. We don't need more pictures of politics. We don't need more what we call representations of the crisis. What we think is we need more imagination to find ourselves to get out of that crisis, and that for us involves forms of disobedience as well.